just like you and just like me. He had a name. They called him Marlon. I called him the kid from hell. For Danny, it was just a baseball glove. Teresa, she's a story unfolding. These were three of the kids that rode my school bus 30 years ago. Mark Ostrowski says that chaos is out there. Chaos means opportunity. I believe that chaos is more than just out there and more than just an opportunity. I believe that chaos is inevitable. As long as humanity inhabits the earth, chaos is going to be with us. Founded in the mathematical and scientific field, chaos is defined as a lack of order. If we leave chaos alone and fail to bring order to it, it results in entropy. Entropy is defined as disorder. Now, I'm not here to give you a discourse on the ideas of entropy and chaos, but I am here to invite you to join me in what I believe we can do to impact chaos. And I believe that together, if we're willing to step into the chaos, we can actually bring about change in the lives of those that are affected by the chaos. Several years ago, 1988 to be exact, I came with an encounter to what I thought was a new type of chaos in my life. It was the year I married my wife, and 3 weeks after our honeymoon, when we returned back home, I started driving her school bus. Now, in case you're just wondering, she was not a student on my bus. Let me make that very clear. She owned the bus company. So, as a job, I started driving her school bus while working some other jobs in college. And during this time, I discovered that driving a school bus was really a lot of chaos. People ask me all the time, what was it like to drive a school bus? And I explain it this way. Imagine yourself the only reasonable adult stranded on an island with 66 other people. Some of them juvenile offenders and the others scared of their shadow. That's what it was like every day for 10 years that I drove a bus. I'll never forget that those students that rode my bus, many of them, most of them, were trapped in the middle to lower class part of society, and the majority of those were very poor. This was new for me because I had never rode a school bus much, so to drive a school bus was very different. You see, I believe that you and I can impact chaos in 3 ways. Number one, when we serve others. He had a name. They called him Marlon. I called him the kid from hell. You want to know why? Because I was sure that's where he came from and was confident that's where he was going. For a year and a half, when he was in the 9th grade, you got it? Marlon was the number one contributor to the chaos on bus number 9. He had this little game that he would play often, and he would come on the bus and he would take paper wads. And so if you've ever done this to a bus driver, you should apologize when you leave this room. But he took these paper wads and he would begin to throw those from the back of the bus, and they would come as close to as good to the front, but would never make it past about the middle row. Well, Marlon wasn't content with that, and the more order I tried to bring to the chaos, or in fact, the more control I tried to bring to Marlon, the more difficult he became. So he brought racquetballs on the bus, and I'll never forget it. He began to throw these racquetballs from the back of the bus, and they would continue to fly past the middle row, and on occasions, they would hurl right past my head and hit the windshield. You know, being the number one, super sensitive, caring adult on the island I was trapped on that bus, I was a little patient with Marlon a couple of times. And then whenever one of those whizzed by my head and hit the windshield, I realized I got to do something. So immediately I slammed on my brakes, put the bus in park, turned around, and walked with my best Barney Fife pose to the back of the bus. Marlon, aware of my frustration at the time, got up, opened the back door of the bus, jumped out into the street, to which I met him with this remark: "Hey, I'm finished with you, man. I'm kicking you off the bus." Marlon offered some gestures that I will not give to you tonight, and some vocabulary that is not common for me. And when I took the students to the school, I went to the principal's office, and it was over. He was suspended 3 weeks. I won the battle. The 3 weeks that Marlon was not on the bus, I thought about him. You see, I remember that Marlon's chaos was different than most people. His mom was absent from the home. His dad lost a leg in a crash when he was young. So before Marlon could get on the school bus to go to school with the other kids, he had to take care of his dad, who was crippled, and at that point an alcoholic. And then Marlon would get on the bus and try to cope and go back and repeat one time after another. So I decided we've got to do something. So I contacted a university friend of mine that was across the tracks from where my bus route was, and we pitched this idea, and we decided we would just bring these college students across the tracks to tutor these kids. And they started, and it was great, and it was awesome. And Marlon finished the school or got graduated from school, and I'll never forget it. We lost contact, and about 15 years later, I'm sitting at the university where I work in my office, and a Coca-Cola truck pulls up beside my window. And guess who got out of the Coca-Cola truck? Marlon, the kid from hell. I thought, who did Marlon steal a Coca-Cola truck from? He had the keys, he put the drinks on the two-wheeler, and he wheeled them around to the front of the building, and I ran out of my office, and I met him at the front door, and I looked at him, and I said, "Marlon," and he said, "Will." We were mesmerized by the moment of a re-encounter over about 15 years that we had not seen each other. And I said to Marlon, "What are you doing?" To which he said, "I'm delivering Cokes, Will." And then he said, "Hey, Will," and that tone caused me to pause. And I looked at him, and he said, "Thank you for them tutors. I made it. I got a job. I'm married. I got a house." 13 years with Coca-Cola at the time. Talked to Marlon a couple of days ago. He's up for a promotion now. Number two, we can impact chaos if we will simply empower others to dream. For Danny, a baseball glove was enough. I got a favorite chicken place that I go to about 10:30 in the morning because the chicken is freshest at that time of day, because it's after breakfast and in between lunch, and they're forced to cook it for you because they're open. And I go in there and I take my papers and I'm going to grade my papers, and I'm excited about it because it's me and gravy and chicken. It's a Southern thing, and it's a great place to do my work. I'm nestling in to study or to do my grading, and all of a sudden my alarm goes off on my phone, and it reminds me of a funeral visitation that I'm supposed to be at. I don't like funerals, for number one. Number two, I didn't even know the deceased lady. And number three, I felt compelled to go simply because my friend was the son-in-law. I go to the funeral visitation. I'm standing in the lobby. This kid walks up to me, a little older than a kid, and he looks at me and he said, "Did you used to drive a school bus?" This was about 6 months ago, and I looked at him and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Is your name Will?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Danny." And he told me his last name. He said, 30 years ago, you gave me a baseball glove on the bus, and I just wanted to tell you, it changed my life." We went in, did our respects, came out. I said, "Danny, can we meet later next week?" He said, "Yeah." So we met at an ice cream stop the next week, and I walk in, and Danny's already there, and I was going to buy his ice cream, and he finished his ice cream before I got there, and he had a shadow box on the table. You know what a shadow box is? It's what your mama or your grandmama put stuff in that really may not matter to anyone, and they hang it on the wall. He laid the shadow box down, took the back off of it, took the glove out, held the glove in his hand. I wanted to touch the glove. He began to tell me the story. On the bus when I was in the 5th grade, we talked about baseball. I'm not sure you even knew about baseball, but you seem to care about me. So when we talked about baseball, I'll never forget it. I said to you, "I'm going to play baseball." You said, "What position?" I said, "I'm going to play shortstop." And you said, "No, you're not a shortstop. Play second base." He said, "Well, I played second base, and then I began to coach after I finished high school." And he said, "I'll never forget the day you gave me the glove, Will." He said, "I was getting off the bus, and I was standing at the bottom of the steps, and you had said, 'Hey, Danny, wait.' And it was the last day of school, and you looked at me, and you looked down, and you pulled an old glove out, this one, from a box beside your seat, and you tossed it to me in the stairwell. You said, 'Hey, Danny, I believe in you, do good. Danny said, for 14 years, I take this baseball glove to the field at every team I coach, and I'll say to my players, I believe in you. And I tell them the story of my bus driver giving me a baseball glove 30 years earlier, at that time, whatever year it was, and he said, I say to them, I believe in you, now let's play baseball. You see, I'm convinced that we can impact chaos if we will simply help others dream. Number 3, I'm convinced we can impact chaos if we help others know that they matter. About 2.5 months ago, I was at a family wedding. The wedding was great and the reception was good, and I was standing there waiting to get some food, and this girl walks up to me, a lady now, and she said to me, she said, is your name Will? I said, yeah. She said, you used to drive my school bus 29 years ago. I looked puzzled. I didn't remember who she was. She said, you don't remember me? I said, I'm so sorry. She said, it's okay, I remember you. She said, every day I would get on your school bus, and every afternoon when I would get off of your school bus, I'll never forget it, you would look at me and you would look at everybody else on the bus, and you would say something nice to us, and you would encourage us that we were important and that we mattered. I'm a mom now, she said, and every time I take my kids to school, before that door opens, I do for them what you did for me. And I encourage my kids that they can have a good day. What you hear tonight didn't begin yesterday for me. It didn't begin 30 years ago when I was driving a school bus. It began 50 years ago when I heard my mom call my name. I don't know what you did when mom called your name when you were 5 years old. I kept playing. I'll never forget it. I was sitting at my house and I had this little masterpiece of toy soldiers around me and any other kind of stuff that I could get my hands on. And as I was playing, my mom, I heard her say, William. I'd heard that before. It wasn't necessary. William. It was getting a little bit more noticeable, but I kept playing. William, come here. I left my playground, went to my mom. She's standing at the front door of our house. When I got to my mom, she bends over, pulls my shirt back away from my chest, and stuffs a bag of cups down my shirt. She puts a bag of popcorn in my left hand and an ice-cold jug of Kool-Aid in my right hand. I'm excited. We're going on a picnic. So I thought. My mom opens the door, and our house was about 5 steps up on the front porch, and we could see all the way out down the road to the church where my dad pastored, and I could see everything from a high level, even as a short 5-year-old. My mom said to me, see the men working in the ditch? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, everybody deserves a cool drink on a hot day. I want you to take this stuff to the man with the big hat, and I want you to give it to him. I made my trek down those 5 steps, looked back at my mom, and I waved at my mom waved at me as if to say, it's okay, keep going. So here I am carrying all of this heavy stuff with cups coming out of my shirt, looking for the man with the big hat. As I kept walking, I see the men working in the ditch. I get closer to them. I can hear them talking. They're saying words I'd never heard before. I was afraid. I watched them and I looked for the man with the big hat. And when I found him, not only did he have a big hat, he was different than the rest of them. All of those guys with the shovels working in the ditch, they had stripes down both sides of their legs, and they had really big letters on the back of their shirts. But not the man with the big hat. The man with the big hat also had a big badge and a big shotgun and glasses that looked like mirrors. And when I saw his glasses, I could see my fear in my eyes. And I dropped the popcorn, put down the Kool-Aid, pulled the cups out of my shirt, gave them to the man in the big hat, and ran as fast as I could back to my mom. My mom met me at the front porch, and together we turned around and watched one by one as the men in the ditch with the stripes on their legs laid down the shovel and went to the man in the big hat for a cup of cool Kool-Aid. My mom said, you're different than those men. But you see, William, everybody likes Kool-Aid. For weeks, these men would come to our house or to our street, and they would clean the ditch. And every Saturday for weeks and weeks, my mom would send me out as a courier of good. She taught me a very valuable lesson that day. I'll never forget it. She said, William, people matter. Even the inmates cleaning the ditch next to the house. I don't know where you are in your journey. Perhaps you're just beginning. Perhaps you've been doing this journey of chaos walking for about 30 years. Maybe you're on year 50, I don't know. But what I do know is impacting chaos involves human interaction. It's about caring for other people. It's about knowing somebody's name. Marlon, Teresa, Danny. I'm convinced that you and me, all of us together, can impact chaos if we'll step in and serve and empower others to dream and let them know they matter. Thank you.